everybody. I'm Shannon Estenoz. I am the Chief Operating Officer and Vice President of the Everglades Foundation. The Everglades Foundation is a not-for-profit organization that's 27 years old, and we are dedicated 100%. Our sole mission is to restore America's Everglades. South Florida is a subtropical environment, and it gets about 60 inches of rainfall every year. Most of that rainfall comes during a 6-month wet season. So we get big rain for 6 months, and then we get almost no rain for the second 6 months of the year. So if you could travel back in time to before non-native folks began settling Florida, let's say 200 years ago, South Florida would have been a very, very wet place. In fact, go back even farther, Spanish explorers actually thought that the Everglades was a lagoon. They didn't even think of it as land. That's how wet South Florida used to be. So starting at the turn of the 20th century, folks began the process of trying to drain as much water off of the South Florida landscape as possible to promote the growth of cities and of agriculture. And the way they did this was to build a massive system of canals and levees and huge structures to move vast quantities of water off the land and out to the ocean and to the Gulf of Mexico. So that effort to drain the Everglades was pretty continuous for about 70 years in the 20th century, from about the turn of the century all the way up to the early 1970s. And so that by the time you got to the 1970s, really famous places like the city of Miami and Fort Lauderdale, they started to grow exponentially, and we had large-scale agriculture was thriving. So this drainage era of the 20th century it worked out pretty well for agricultural and urban development. It didn't work out so well for the Everglades. So millions of acres of Everglades habitat was lost forever to pavement and streets and shopping malls and farms. And then the remaining Everglades, which is about half of its original size, the remaining Everglades was either deprived of water. Sometimes it was given dirty water by this water management system. Sometimes it was given too much water. So you had conditions where the remaining Everglades are sometimes flooded, and sometimes they literally catch on fire because they're so dry. And the reason for that is because the man-made water control system that we built was moving water around really in all the wrong ways and in all the wrong quantities, and sometimes it was pretty dirty water. So like I said, it was working out pretty well for cities and farms, not working out so well for the Everglades. Now this is a huge problem, and it's not just because the Everglades is a world-class ecosystem and is unique in the world. There's no other Everglades. It's all of those things. I mean, it is literally one of the most important ecosystems on the planet. The Everglades provides fresh water into our coastal environments where we have some pretty famous fisheries. People come from all over the world to South Florida to catch fish along our coasts. We have to find a way to live in harmony with the Everglades that remains so that we, people, can continue to live and thrive in South Florida, which of course now has become, one of the most important economic regions in the country, where people from all over the country and all over the world come to recreate, they come to play. That's why people come to Florida. So it's more important now than it's ever been to restore the Everglades. So how are we doing it? We literally have to go back to that huge water management control system I said we built in the last century, and we have to redesign it and rebuild it. And that system, to give you a sense of scale, covers an area twice the size of New Jersey. So it took 70 years to drain the Everglades, and we're going to restore it in just under half that amount of time. And then it becomes a kind of a permanent challenge for the generations that come after us to take better care of it than the generations before us did. And that's where you come in.